45 years ago when I was beginning junior high school, and I had the unfortunate situation where I had to follow three brothers, two of which were basically geniuses in Chuck and David. And so every year I start school, I start school, and inevitably after a couple weeks of school, my teacher would pull me aside and she would say, "Are you sure you're Chuck and David's brother?" And I'd roll my eyes and wait for it to happen again with another teacher. Fast forward to now, even though I was clearly the best athlete in the family and had a lot more going for me, the first person to attend William Carey College and taught Larry everything he knew about coaching. Now when I meet people when I come home, they'll say, "I didn't know Steve that Larry had another brother." So I guess that's why they let me speak. The reality is that I think one of the reasons I'm speaking is that my relationship with my dad was somewhat different than my brothers who stand beside me. I think their relationship was easier because of the fact that they stayed in line a little better. And I think some of it had to do with the fact that when Chuck and Steve and David were just getting into the age of needing dad's participation in things, he was more healthy and he could do that. And with me, that it kind of ended. You say, what about Larry? Well, Larry was the baby of the family, so it was his world. We just kind of lived in it. And I think academically, too, it was a struggle because I clearly, in the classroom, I told somebody I graduated baseball. My dad didn't like it. So it was always a challenge. But the reality is, because of those challenges, we had intense moments, especially as I got to college. We had some times that were very, let's just say, heated. And I was a little bullheaded and stubborn, and we'd go at it real hard. I'd leave angry, and he would leave angry, and there were just situations where he wanted to give me input, and I just wanted to push back. But we were both committed to making this a relationship that would end well. And so sometimes when you do that, when you have that intensity, and you can make it through it, it creates a very unique relationship, and I think that's what we were able to do. And what I'd like to do is to share with you three things quickly that he showed me during those times that impacted me for the rest of my life. And I think my brothers would say the exact same things that I would say. The first one is that he always kept it simple. Whenever I went to my dad for advice, he never made a long speech. He never did a lot of things like I did today. My kids really kind of get tired of me when I'm at the kitchen table and I try to turn everything into a life lesson and make it some kind of monumental thing, and they just say, "Dad, can you just please pass the butter?" But my dad, he didn't care about that. He just wanted to give advice that was straight on, and he would say things like, "Just do the right thing. Just be fair. Just treat people the way they should be treated, and you'll be okay." And he always said, "You can do it. Just don't make excuses." My brother Dave was sharing a couple of days ago that when he had a career decision to make, he went to my dad and kind of laid it all out for him. Instead of my dad giving advice, he said, "It sounds like you already know what to do." And Dave knew what that meant and what he did. And that's the way he was his whole life. Whenever he gave into it, it was always very simple. The greatest example of that I can give was when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was about to start playing baseball, and I think he'd gotten tired of trying to teach Chuck and Steve and David, how to play and how to hit the ball, and he just gave up. So when I came to play, my mom took me to my dad and said, "Hey, Don's got his first practice tomorrow, and you have advice for him." And he said, "Yeah, just watch the ball." And I was like, "That's it? Just watch the ball?" He said, "You watch the ball from the time the catcher throws the ball back to the pitcher. You watch the ball when it's in the line. It comes behind, you watch it out of his hand, you watch it all the way to the bat." And I started thinking about that, I can do that. And sure enough, I started through that process, and I don't know anybody else that I ever played with that would tell you they did that. And through the years, through the Little League and Pony League and then high school, I had this one thing, and I know that when I didn't laugh, and my brothers would say I did a lot of home runs, which I did. The one thing I didn't do was strike out. When I was a senior in high school, I batted 101 times and struck out once. And I had 56 straight bats without striking out. The reason that happened, because my dad 10 years before had said, "Watch the ball." And it was that kind of advice that I took to heart, and it lasted me throughout my baseball career. The same kind of advice to brother. The funny story about that is that played in the Mississippi High School All-Star game. I think I'm the only brother that did that. And the night before the game, they introduced each player, and they said, give a little bit about him. They said, Don Knight and my mom and dad were there. They said, Don Knight has struck out one time in 101 bats. I was like, oh, that's great. So my first at bat in All-Star game, I struck out. That goes a lesson in pride. So keep it simple. Number two was unconditional love. When I was a college senior in college, I did some things pretty smart financially. I made some just dumb financial mistakes over and over again. Spent money I didn't have. I didn't have a job, go to a part-time job at school, and the debt continued to mount. It was something that I knew about. It was a very challenging time. And it got to the point where I didn't know what to do. So finally, when it got to where if I didn't just tell somebody something bad was going to happen, I went to my parents' house. And I remember Mom seeing me and saying, wow, she knew right away something was wrong. So she let's go get your dad. So she went and got my dad and sat down. And he just listened. I was scared to death, but he was going to say, you got to go to baseball, you got to go to school, you got to get a job. And he didn't do any of that. He said, tell me how much you owe, tell me who you owe, we'll figure it out. And so he did that. And he, after that, the next step he did was he went, and my mom and dad had a lot of money, and they were strained, but also were all needing money. He went and got a second mortgage on the house and said, hey, get out of school, you take care of this. And it was the first example to me, other than the unconditional love I felt from my Heavenly Father. It was the first time I really realized what unconditional love was like from parents and from my mom. And it had a huge impact on me, and had a huge impact on how I treat people today and how I raise my kids. It's just another example. And I'm sure each one of these guys can tell you the same thing. The experiences they have with dad and mom, or, they didn't deserve what they got from a love standpoint. They got it because of unconditional. The last thing is, and I think the most important thing that I learned from my dad is that I had what it took. And I believe that every boy wants him to father to hear, you have what it takes. And if you hear that, then you've got a chance to be successful in life. If you don't hear it, then you're going to struggle tremendously. And when I got into college, there was a tough time for me. I thought I was going to get a chance to play pro baseball. It didn't happen. I had to take a job that I really hated. I was struggling. It just felt like I was just a loser, depressed. It was very, very hard. And one day, I was working at my job, and the job went later, and my fiance at the time, David, my wife for 30 years, went to our house, and she happened to have a conversation with my dad. And it wasn't planned, it just kind of happened. And when I got home, David said, hey, I talked to your dad about our situation. When she said that, I thought, I wonder what he said. I had no idea what he said. So, well, what did he say? He said, don't you worry about Don. Don's a hard worker. He's going to be successful. That's all he said. And it was like when he said that, I heard those words. My insides basically changed. It's like somebody physically changed who I was on the inside. To know that my Father believed me that much, that he knew that I had it, just changed me. From that point on, my direction changed, my path changed, and I really look back to any success I've had in my life with that conversation. And I know that there's no coincidence that me and my brothers have been married for over 150 years, following the marriage of 64 years from my parents. These guys have been successful beyond what's really anybody would imagine every single day. From the athletic fields to their work, to the jobs, to the ministry, it's just been uncanny. The success they've had. The reason that is because God has taught us you have what it takes and you can make it happen. And that's the biggest blessing that He gave all of us. So thank you guys for the opportunity to share.